What started as a captivating orca show swiftly descended into a nightmare for trainer Emily Cadeaux. Amid the cheers of an enthusiastic crowd, her trusted orca, Nayar, suddenly turned aggressive. The performance took a horrifying turn, unraveling into a scene of shocking chaos. For as long as she could remember, Emily Cadeaux had been captivated by the powerful, enigmatic presence of orcas. Each summer, she would visit Blue Waters Marine Park, drawn by the deep bond between trainers and the ocean's largest predators. Over the years, her bedroom walls became covered with posters of animals she loved, and her fascination grew stronger with each visit. Her childhood dream was clear. One day, she would stand among her heroes, working side by side with these majestic creatures. Blue Waters Marine Park was a renowned facility that showcased the beauty of marine life while championing conservation. Through captivating performances and interactive exhibits, it inspired countless children to dream big and nurtured a passion for marine animals, encouraging many to pursue careers in marine biology and animal training. Emily was one of those children, her dreams shaped by the wonders she witnessed there. Now, at 28, she had achieved her dream, standing on the platform at Blue Waters Marine Park where her mentors had once stood. With nearly a decade of experience, she was now one of the park's most skilled trainers. Her bond with Nayar, the park's star orca, was strong, built on countless hours of practice, patience, and trust. Blue Waters felt more like a home to Emily than any place on land. Her friends often joked that she practically lived at the park, and in truth it was almost accurate. Nayar in particular was at the center of her world. However, in recent weeks, Emily had noticed subtle changes in Nayar's behavior. It wasn't anything overt, just small signs that only someone who knew her well would catch. Nayar seemed slightly more restless and somewhat distant. That morning, Emily shared her concerns with her team, expressing unease over the orca's mood. They reassured her that it was likely nothing serious, just a passing phase. Though comforted by their words, Emily found it hard to push her worries aside, hoping the show would go smoothly as always. Little did she know, her concerns would prove well-founded, though the realization would come far too late. Orcas, or killer whales, are magnificent yet untamable creatures of the sea, their intelligence matched by a raw power that few animals can rival. Known as apex predators, they hunt seals, fish, and even other whales with incredible precision. In the wild, orcas roam hundreds of miles, navigating the ocean's depths with an independence that captivates and commands respect. Trainers understand this well, recognizing that the orca's wild nature always lurks beneath the surface. Yet, amidst the daily routines and familiar interactions, it's easy to forget that these beautiful animals are not merely performers. They are wild beings capable of instinct and strength that no amount of training can fully contain. The performance began without a hitch. Nayar moved through her opening routines gracefully, leaping high into the air and splashing back down with a force that sent waves crashing across the tank. The crowd erupted in cheers, and Emily felt a flicker of relief. Perhaps she had just been overthinking things. But as the show went on, an uneasy feeling settled in. Nayar's movements became sharper, unpredictable in a way that set Emily's nerves on edge. Only she could see it. The crowd was oblivious, caught up in the excitement, but something felt off. Nayar was circling faster than usual, her dorsal fin cutting through the water with a speed that made Emily uneasy. Finally, they reached the finale. It was their signature move, and the crowd always loved it. Emily dove into the tank, plunging into the cool water as the audience's cheers surged around her. As she descended, the familiar thrill of the performance took over, and she signaled to Nayar to join her. Nayar swam close, her massive shadow passing beneath Emily, closer than usual. Emily reached out a hand, signaling Nayar to back up slightly. Then, before she could fully register what was happening, Nayar's behavior took a frightening turn. In an instant, Nayar's massive 21-foot, 11,500-pound body surged forward, and before Emily could react, the orca's powerful jaws clamped down on her leg. The grip was fierce, an overwhelming strength that dragged her downward with brutal force. The water exploded into chaos as Nayar pulled Emily deeper, twisting and thrashing. Panic surged, but her training kicked in as she tried to free herself, her mind racing even as she felt the icy sting of pain shoot through her leg. Blood began to cloud the water around them as Nayar's grip tightened. In the stands, the crowd's cheers turned to gasps, then horrified screams as the reality of the situation dawned on them. Emily's parents were there, watching, their joy shattered as they saw her struggle. Her mother's voice broke through the noise, her cries frantic and helpless. Along the edge of the tank, trainers sprang into action, throwing ropes, shouting commands, and trying to reach Emily. But it was clear that nothing was breaking through Nayar's grip. Emily's movement slowed as her strength faded. She reached toward the surface, her hand breaking through for a brief, desperate moment before Nayar pulled her back under. The water around them was dark now, tinged red as Emily's fight weakened. The orca continued to thrash, her body moving with a terrifying, relentless power that left the trainers on the edge of the tank frozen with helplessness. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it was over. Nayar released her grip and Emily's body floated slowly toward the surface. Rescue divers reached her within seconds, pulling her limp form from the tank, but it was already too late. The audience was silent, the park blanketed in shock. What had started as a joyful display had ended in tragedy, and the news of Emily Cadeaux's death spread quickly, casting a long shadow over Blue Waters. In the days that followed, Blue Waters Marine Park shut down all orca performances, and the gates eventually closed for good. Emily's friends and family held a quiet memorial by the ocean honoring the life of a woman who had dedicated herself to the animal she loved. Her parents, heartbroken, shared stories of her passion, and her friends stood in silence, grappling with the loss of someone so young, so full of life. Those who had been there that day were left with a haunting reminder. Despite the years of training and care, the wild could never truly be tamed. Nayar's actions were a chilling reminder of that truth, and Emily's memory remained tied to the sea she had loved so dearly. However, while Emily's tragic experience highlighted the unpredictable nature of marine life, it wasn't the only incident that questioned the boundaries between humans and orcas. Just a few years earlier at SeaWorld San Diego, trainer Tamari Tollison found herself at the mercy of the very creatures she revered, revealing the thin line that separates admiration from peril. It was July 8, 2002 at SeaWorld San Diego, a place where families gathered to watch marine life perform. Among the trainers was Tamari Tollison, a dedicated 28-year-old who had always dreamed of working with orcas. With years of experience under her belt, she felt a deep connection to the animals, especially two orcas named Orchid and Splash. This day began like any other, with trainers preparing for the afternoon show. Tamari walked to Shamu Stadium feeling the familiar thrill of anticipation. The stadium was packed, families eagerly awaiting the performance. Children pointed excitedly at the water, while parents settled into their seats with cameras in hand. Tamari loved sharing her passion for marine life, educating the audience about the orca's intelligence and grace. However, both orcas had histories that hinted at danger. Splash, originally named Katak, was born with health challenges including epilepsy. In 1995, he suffered a seizure that resulted in severe injuries, including damage to his jaw. Despite his resilience, the scars of his past served as a reminder of the hidden risks in training orcas. Orchid, a hybrid orca, also had a troubled background. Born at SeaWorld, she witnessed her mother's death during a performance, which shaped her behavior. In 2006, she attacked another trainer, pulling him underwater for nearly half a minute. These incidents were often overlooked in favor of entertainment, a horrific mistake that would later prove to be wrong. As the show began, Tamari signaled to Orchid and Splash. The audience watched in awe as the orcas leaped and splashed, demonstrating their training and agility. Each performance was a culmination of countless hours of practice, and Tamari felt immense pride watching her beloved orcas showcase their skills. Splash executed a perfect breach, sending a cascade of water over the edge of the pool, eliciting cheers from the crowd. However, as the routine continued, Tamari sensed a change in the water. The atmosphere shifted, and the behavior of the orcas became increasingly erratic. Orchid and Splash displayed signs of agitation, swimming closer together, creating ripples in the water that spoke of unease. Tamari furrowed her brow, trying to gauge what was troubling them. Perhaps it was the noise from the crowd, or maybe the heat of the day was making them uncomfortable. Determined to maintain control, Tamari attempted to redirect their attention with commands and gestures she had practiced countless times before. But today was different. The orcas seemed unresponsive to her signals, and their movements grew more aggressive. The excitement of the audience shifted to murmurs of confusion and concern. Tamari's heart raced as she watched the orcas circle in the water, their bodies tense and focused on one another. Then, without warning, Orchid lunged up from the water. Tamari barely had time to react as the massive orca clamped down on her foot, dragging her into the pool. A gasp rippled through the crowd, and panic set in as the screams of the audience echoed around the stadium. In an instant, Tamari was submerged, her body caught in the grip of a creature she had devoted her life to training. The water swirled around her as she struggled against the overwhelming force of Orchid's bite. Tamari's heart raced as she felt the cold water engulf her. She kicked and thrashed, her screams muffled beneath the surface. It was chaos. The other trainers on the platform shouted, desperately trying to pull her to safety. One trainer, Robin Sheet, recognized the danger and made a quick decision. She rushed to the adjoining pool, releasing a more dominant female orca named Kasaka, hoping the new arrival would disrupt the aggression between Orchid and Tamari. The moment Kasaka entered the tank, the dynamic shifted. Orchid released her grip and Tamari found her way to the surface, gasping for air. She had sustained severe injuries during the attack, including a compound fracture in her forearm. The shock of the incident left her shaken and in pain, but she was alive. As she reached the edge of the pool, fellow trainers pulled her up, their faces pale with fear. Tamari was rushed to the hospital where doctors treated her arm injuries. Medical staff worked quickly to assess the damage. As they treated her, reports of the incident began to emerge, detailing the performance and the unexpected attack that occurred in the water. This incident marked a turning point for SeaWorld. Videos circulated drawing attention to the dangers trainers faced while working with orcas. The event sparked debates about the ethics of keeping such intelligent creatures in captivity for entertainment. Tamari's experience was not just an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a larger issue regarding the treatment of marine mammals. Tamari's recovery was long and painful, with visible scars and lingering emotional trauma. When she returned to SeaWorld, fear and doubt replaced her joy, making her question the safety of her environment and the treatment of the orcas she loved. Despite the trauma, Tamari became a voice for change within the organization. She advocated for revised safety protocols, emphasizing the need for trainers to prioritize their well-being and the well-being of the animals. The attack raised broader questions about the nature of captivity. Advocates argue that orcas like Orchid and Splash deserve to live in environments that mimicked their natural habitats. As time passed, SeaWorld faced increasing scrutiny over its practices. The documentary Blackfish brought national attention to the issues surrounding captive orcas, featuring Tamari's harrowing experience. Public perception shifted, and discussions about the ethics of marine parks gained momentum. While Tamari survived the attack, the scars of that day served as a haunting reminder of the dangers trainers face. As time passed, those lessons began to fade. Meanwhile, over 1,000 miles away at Sealand of the Pacific, a young trainer was about to confront an orca with a dark past, an encounter that would become known as the most horrific orca attack ever recorded. Marine parks often present a captivating image of thrilling performances with magnificent animals, but behind the scenes, the reality can be starkly different. Working with powerful creatures like orcas comes with risks that can lead to devastating consequences. For Kelty Byrne, a trainer at Sealand, the joy of working with these incredible animals would soon become overshadowed by tragedy. Sealand of the Pacific, located in Canada, was known for its exciting displays featuring orcas, sea lions, and dolphins. Each day, the trainers and animals captivated audiences, creating a facade that masked the often harsh realities of captivity. Among the orcas was Tilikum, a killer whale with a troubled past that raised significant ethical concerns about keeping such intelligent creatures confined. Tilikum was captured off the coast of Iceland at just 2 years old, torn from his pod, and thrust into a life of confinement. His first year in captivity was particularly difficult, filled with isolation and stress. When he arrived at Sealand in 1984, he shared a tank with 2 older female orcas, Ha-1 and Nutka-4. The close quarters led to a harsh social hierarchy, and Tilikum often found himself the target of bullying, resulting in significant physical and mental strain. Despite his troubled past, Tilikum had a strong bond with his trainers, particularly Eric Walters, a biologist who recognized the need for compassionate care. However, the demands of entertainment often overshadowed the animal's welfare. In an effort to manage the aggressive dynamics among the orcas, Sealand hired a new head trainer named Bruce Stevens from SeaWorld. He warned the trainers that if they didn't keep the orcas engaged, the animals might resort to dangerous behavior to entertain themselves. But as we know about human nature, many ignored this warning or failed to act until the situation grew dire. They believed they had more time, unaware that the tensions among the orcas were escalating. Eric, among those trainers, grew increasingly concerned as he noticed Tilikum and the other orcas becoming restless. He believed that the environment at Sealand was like a fast food restaurant, where the focus was on quick entertainment rather than the well-being of the animals. Tilikum, a highly intelligent creature, deserved more than a life filled with repetitive routines. As boredom and frustration set in among the orcas, they began to display increasingly aggressive behaviors. This change in demeanor made any interaction with humans more dangerous. By May 1989, Eric decided to leave Sealand. He felt that the situation was becoming untenable and feared that someone would eventually get hurt. Tragically, his warning would come true on February 20th, 1991, when an ordinary day at the park transformed into a nightmare. While visitors enjoyed the attractions, Kelty, a passionate 20-year-old trainer, prepared for her shift. She loved her work with the orcas, especially Tilikum. The morning started like any other. Trainers fed the orcas and moved through their usual routines. Kelty felt a spark of excitement as she stepped into the training area, her pulse quickening at the thought of working with Tilikum. But something felt different. The orcas were unusually restless, splashing and vocalizing louder than usual. Kelty noticed Tilikum circling the tank with a powerful energy that hinted at his frustration. She felt a twinge of unease but set it aside, focusing on the day's schedule. As the trainers went through their morning drills, Kelty worked closely with Tilikum, trying to engage him with toys and signals. The other trainers exchanged worried glances, but the routine continued. Kelty felt a thrill every time she interacted with Tilikum, oblivious to the growing tension. She believed she could manage the situation, confident in her bond with the orca. The moment of crisis came unexpectedly. After finishing her training session, Kelty slipped and fell into Tilikum's tank. In a split second, Tilikum seized her foot, dragging her beneath the surface. Panic erupted as her fellow trainers rushed to help. The sight of Kelty in Tilikum's grasp was horrifying. She was caught by a 22.5-foot long, 12,500-pound giant with strength that made escape impossible. Still, she fought fiercely, gasping for breath each time she surfaced, only to be pulled back under by the powerful orca. Chaos erupted as trainers threw life rings into the tank, desperately trying to save Kelty. They banged on buckets and tossed fish to distract the orcas, but Tilikum's grip remained unyielding. In a terrifying moment, Kelty surfaced, caught in Tilikum's jaws, screaming for help. Then, just as quickly, she vanished beneath the water's surface, silence replacing her cries. Despite her drowning, it took the trainers another 2 hours to persuade the orcas to release her. By that time, Tilikum and the other whales had bitten and stripped her multiple times, showcasing the power and unpredictability of these magnificent creatures. Retrieving her body took nearly 2 hours, during which Tilikum and the other whales continued to bite and drag her, a stark demonstration of their immense power. Tilikum, being the largest orca in captivity, made Kelty's struggle even more perilous. Sealand's management quickly labeled the incident a tragic accident. However, many, including Paul Spong, director of Orca Lab, believed it was predictable, stemming from the harsh conditions the orcas endured. In the wake of the tragedy, Sealand closed its doors, but Tilikum's story continued when he was transferred to SeaWorld in Orlando. There, trainers claimed to be unaware of his troubled history, overlooking the warning signs that had accompanied his past. This oversight would lead to further tragedy. In July 1999, Daniel Dukes, a man who had evaded security to spend the night in the park, was found dead in Tilikum's tank, his body showing signs of trauma. Despite the incidents, Tilikum was featured in performances at SeaWorld. The horrors continued when on February 24, 2010, during a show, trainer Don Brancheau was attacked by Tilikum. He seized her ponytail and pulled her into the water, shaking violently despite the frantic attempts of fellow trainers to rescue her. Tragically, she drowned before help could arrive. The incident was labeled a training accident, but many believe Tilikum's actions were deliberate. Over the course of his life, he had been linked to 3 deaths, but continued to perform until he succumbed to bacterial infection in 2017 at the age of 35. Following Don Brancheau's death, SeaWorld faced intense scrutiny and a sharp decline in attendance. Although the park remained open, it pledged to shift its focus toward education and conservation, ending its breeding program for orcas. While Kelty's story highlighted the tragic consequences of captivity, trainers faced challenges long before their lives became centered around performances. The experience of trainers like Kelty are just one chapter in a disturbing history of exploitation. In the next story, we focus on Ken Peters, a young trainer whose career was shattered by blind trust in a powerful creature, an unsettling reminder that no matter how familiar we become, the wild can never be fully tamed. In 1965, the world of marine entertainment took a dark turn when Ted Griffin, the owner of the Seattle Marine Aquarium, captured a wild killer whale. This act marked the beginning of a troubling relationship between humans and these magnificent creatures. The crowds flocked to see the spectacle, their excitement palpable as they marveled at the orca's power and grace. However, behind the scenes, a chilling reality unfolded. Within a year, the whale succumbed to the immense stress of captivity, a haunting reminder of the cost of entertainment. Griffin, undeterred by the tragedy, recognized a lucrative opportunity. He transformed the act of capturing orcas into a thriving business model, one that would cast a long shadow over the industry for decades. The methods of capturing these majestic creatures were harrowing. Explosives separated young orcas from their families, creating chaos in the water. Griffin's crew plunged into the turmoil, using massive nets to drag the terrified animals hundreds of miles to shore. The haunting cries of the family members left behind echoed through the ocean, a heart-wrenching testament to the pain inflicted by these captures. But the true tragedy was just beginning. Killer whales are highly intelligent and social animals. In the wild, they form tight-knit family groups, often remaining with their mothers for life. Their deep bonds and complex communication reflect an emotional capacity that few can fathom. Yet, the consequences of captivity began to reveal a darker side to their nature. In 1978, an orca named Kasatka was captured off the coast of Iceland, a young star who dazzled audiences at SeaWorld. However, as the years passed, captivity wore down her spirit. Early signs of aggression emerged, a predictable response from an animal torn from her family and thrust into confinement. As time went on, the tragic stories of orcas in captivity multiplied. Reports surfaced detailing the inhumane conditions these majestic creatures endured. Trainers like Ken Peters, who worked closely with Kasatka, began to notice the toll it was taking on them both. Ken had dedicated his life to training orcas, viewing them as partners in performance. Yet he could no longer ignore the growing risk. Kasatka had bitten him twice, once in 1993 and again in 1999. Each time he dismissed it as a moment of misunderstanding, a miscommunication between species. Their bond felt profound, and he often marveled at the intelligence of these animals, believing that their connection could overcome the risks. Then came November 30th, 2006, a day that would shatter that illusion. As Ken dove into the water for a routine performance, the anticipation in the audience filled the air. They had come to see a show, but what unfolded was a nightmare. As Ken waited for Kasatka's familiar nudge, he felt a sudden jolt that yanked him beneath the surface. Panic surged through the crowd as they realized something was terribly wrong. Staff members rushed to the edge of the pool, shouting commands, but Kasatka was relentless, dragging Ken deeper into the murky water. Beneath the surface, Ken fought to stay calm, but fear gripped him as he struggled against the powerful orca. He could feel the pressure building in his ears, the weight of the water pressing down on him. Kasatka's grip tightened, her teeth sinking into his foot. Time slowed as Ken's mind raced. This was a moment he had long dreaded. Would this be the end? Instinctively, he reached out, stroking her gently, trying to connect with her. He knew he was at her mercy, and if she turned on him, it would be over in an instant. Then, as if sensing his desperation, Kasatka began to swim toward the surface. Ken gasped for air as she released him, slightly, but still held him tightly. The crowd erupted into chaos. He realized he had to fight for his life. As they broke the surface, he heard frantic calls from staff members above, desperately trying to coax Kasatka away. He struggled, summoning every ounce of strength he had to escape her grip. Each moment felt like an eternity. Finally, the staff lowered a net into the water. Ken swam with all his might, panic surging through him. As Kasatka surfaced again, he whispered her name, hoping to reach her with the bond they had built. Miraculously, she responded, swimming toward the net. Seizing the moment, Ken propelled himself toward the edge of the pool, scrambling out onto the concrete, his heart racing. Emerging battered with puncture wounds and a broken foot, Ken's survival felt like a small miracle amid the chaos. The aftermath sent shockwaves through SeaWorld and ignited fierce debates about the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity. Why hadn't anyone seen this coming? Was the industry prepared to confront the consequences of their actions? Kasatka's story didn't end with the attack. She passed away on August 15, 2017 at the age of 41 due to a persistent lung infection attributed to her years in captivity. At her death, she was the oldest orca in captivity, a bittersweet title that highlighted the scars left by a life spent in confinement. Following her passing, SeaWorld pledged to change its approach to orca care, promising to prioritize their well-being over entertainment. Thank you for joining us for these horrific orca attack stories. These stories serve as a reminder that employing animals for amusement can have disastrous results. Check out our shark attack video, which shows a diver torn from his suit, if you thought this was fascinating. See you at the following one.